Welcome back to Full Displacement. Believe it or not, this is episode 30. Welcome back, Amanda. How are you doing today?
I am delightful today. The big 30. 30 podcasts in the books.
Congratulations. We started around Thanksgiving. Yeah. And here we are. Right. We record weekly. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. We publish on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're going to insert segments in today's episode about what we think is the best of full displacement. Amanda, we'll start with the main 3 topics that relate to yacht brokerage sales. Amanda, we'll start with the main 3 topics that relate to yacht brokerage sales. What are these and why do people care about those most?
You know, the main questions I always get are insurance, financing, and how do I set up and prepare, and what should I expect for survey day? Those are the big 3 that I'm answering every day, all the times. On top of, what kind of boat should I buy, those types of things. But I'm talking about the things that we need to try and educate the boat buyer and the boat sellers about the process of selling a boat.
And on insurance alone, we don't have just 1, but 2 special guests. So we'll refer to those episodes and I'll put the links in the description below.
A lot of people will call us and they're excited. They're buying their boats and they will tell me, we're buying this boat and then the day after we're going to go cruise to all around the world.
The next day, right? 100%. Yeah. We're going to the Bahamas tomorrow.
And I would be the same. Like if I buy a boat, I'm gone. But in my experience, it usually takes longer, right? You buy the boat and you familiarize yourself and you don't really know your schedule. And so we can write you a policy that covers the whole world, but you're going to pay for it. And so what I advise my clients to do is, we'll sit down and say, okay, what are your realistic first year goals? Or what are your goals this year? And they'll say, well, realistically, we're going to, work our way down, stop in a few places on the East Coast and then go to the Bahamas and have a great winter there. And then maybe we'll get, to southern Bahamas and decide we'd like to go to the Caribbean. Everyone says, we don't really know. And that's the whole point of owning a boat. And so the way I tell my clients to do it is say, look, if you're not really sure you're going to go to the Caribbean this year, or you're not really sure you're crossing the Atlantic, let's take it sort of in baby steps. Let's write you a policy with what the most likely cruising is going to be. That way, you're not paying some huge premium only to call us at the end of the year and say, oh, we never went to the South Pacific. Can we have our money back? And the carrier is not going to give you your money back. They're going to say, we wrote this policy. So what I say is, look, think you're going to go to the Caribbean? Maybe. Let's write you a policy for U.S. Bahamas. And then, a few weeks before, if you decide to go to the Caribbean, then we can get Caribbean added onto your policy. Or if your current carrier can't write Caribbean, we'll switch you to another carrier that would be better suited for your cruising. Write a policy for what you're going to do. Don't write a policy for a fantasy cruising ground.
Are boats typically covered when they're getting worked on at a shipyard or if they are being hauled out? What should a owner be aware of in that circumstance? Now we know about named operators and paying attention to that. What else should we know about for this circumstance, boats being worked on or hauled out?
This might be the most important question that you ask today. And so I'm guessing that the answer I'm about to give, neither of you have heard before. Most owners don't know, most insurance brokers don't know, most yacht brokers, most captains. So it is perfectly legal for a shipyard to absolve themselves of any liability, even if it's their fault, while your boat is at their boatyard. The insurance policy, a boat insurance policy, covers every boat to be maintained, hauled out, worked on, with some provisions. If you're doing more higher exposure work like welding, what we call hot work, you need to get approval for something like that. If there's a fire because of a weld or something, the insurer needs to underwrite that. But if you're getting out for a bottom paint, for zincs, for a short haul, for a survey, or for a 6-month refit, just about every shipyard in the country gives you a work order. Now, sometimes that's a 2-page work order, sometimes it's 15 pages. But in that work order, there usually are one of 3, if not all 3 things: a limitation of liability, a hold harmless, and a waiver of subrogation, which means, number 1, If we're hauling your boat out and the strap breaks and we drop your boat on the concrete, you'll hold us harmless. Even though it's our strap, our lift, our shipyard, and you paid us. You will limit all liability and you'll waive subrogation. So where it can interfere with your boat insurance policy is you're allowed to get hauled out, you're allowed to get worked on, but there's something called subrogation in insurance, which means that your insurer pays and then they go after the insurance of the at-fault party, right? So imagine you hire an electrician and you sign a contract with the electrician that says, if you burn my boat down, I won't hold you at fault. He burns your boat down because of some faulty work that the electrician did. Your insurance company will not pay that claim because we've interrupted their ability to recover. So your insurer cannot go get their money back from the party that should have paid in the first place. But because we held them harmless, your insurance policy basically is void. And so this is important because anytime a boater is hauling out at a boatyard, we're signing language that basically voids our policy. And so, yes, we're allowed to haul out as long as that language isn't in there, but it is. And so if you don't know to look for it and you're only looking at the first page of the work order that says bottom paint, zincs, prop speed, whatever, you didn't even know to look at page 4. And in many cases, you're not telling your agent, you're not sending them a copy of the contract. And hey, I just got hauled out for bottom paint. My boat dropped. What do you mean there's a problem? And so this is a big hole in our industry. It hasn't been exploited much because there haven't been massive cases. I mean, I know of a few that we've been involved in and been called as expert witness in. Probably the polar bear case would be an easy one that anybody could Google. A $20 million boat that caught fire in San Diego, I don't know, 10 years ago as a big one. But there haven't been enough landmark cases for the industry to really be aware of this. And because the boatyards are allowed to put this language in there, why wouldn't you? If I could put language in my services that said, if I mess up and you're not covered on your insurance policy, you're not going to hold me liable. Who doesn't like that?
For financing, we actually had our guest from New Coast speak to the subject of yacht financing, which was terrific. And finally, on surveys alone, we had 2 as well. Can you recall who those guests were, Amanda?
Yeah, Eduardo down in the Caribbean, very, very knowledgeable about what he does. And then Randall Boiko, native to Southeast Florida, who has been doing this for over 30 years. So those 2 people alone will give you valuable insights onto how a survey day transpires. Okay, so let's say you've done your inspections on the boat and now you're approaching the haul out yard. Tell us about why a boat should be hauled.
There's a lot of expensive items underneath the boat. You've got the hull, which could have structural issues. There could be cracks, as Amanda was saying. The keel could be loose. You've got propellers, propeller shafts, struts. And if it's, boats go aground and damage is done to propellers and shafts and struts and gets very expensive. So you really need to know, is everything in good condition? And then there's the condition of the hull, which is it solid? Is there delamination or are there blisters?
Can you tell me what the difference between hammer taps, acoustic testing, ultrasounding, there's also like infrared. What all do you do and the differences on those?
Well, ultrasound is for a metal boat where we send a signal through. So it's aluminum or steel. In general, most surveyors will just sound with a kind of a hammer, rubber hammer. And you can tell by the sound, if you've been in the business long enough, you can hear if it's solid. If you hear kind of a dull sound, you know there might be an issue. And then you kind of go into a little more inspection there. Dominantly, that's what most surveyors can really pick up issues with the bottom. There's other things like thermography, where people can buy a little app for $100 and use their iPhone. Not so great. There's $5,000 thermography, but they're usually used, for the most part, if there's a known issue, then you come back to that. And as well as when you're sounding the bottom, You just, yes, if you start hearing and feeling areas that don't sound quite right, yeah, you'll definitely spend more time instead of perhaps taking a sounding every 2 feet. You'll take a sounding every 1 foot. You'll just start to narrow down and make sure you get more of a comprehensive sense of what the bottom's like. Yeah.
If you could share with us the most common engine problems that you see in the boats that you survey, if we start there, what are the things that you've observed?
Deferred maintenance, a lot of seals go bad. Not changing the seals. Overheating of the engine. So basically the sea strainers are clogged. So a vessel comprises of a lot of systems that works together. Engine oftentimes overheat because either the sea strainers were clogged or there's a bend in the hose line that doesn't give good flow of fluids, oil not being changed, all of these things, not flushing out the engines when it comes to all of these basically a corrosion. I would say it's been a few things together. Corrosion on the seals, a lot of that vibration. Engine mounts not being sturdy, so that causes vibrations as well. There's a few things regarding engine issues I've come across in the field.
And I'm noticing a bit of a pattern in what you just kind of spelled out. A lot of this can be prevented. A lot of this can
Yes.
be addressed with good preventative maintenance, having eyes on your engine block before you start your boat. Inspect your engine bay, your engine room, right? See what you
Yes.
can find because the telltales will be there. And then inspect again once you first start the engine, make sure everything's running properly. Take note of questions that you may have, like some of the description of, uneven mounts or drippings or.
Yes. I would also add temperatures. When it comes
Okay.
to an engine, temperatures tell a lot of the story. If you start the engines and you realize that the temperatures were consistent, and then all of a sudden you start your engines and you see that they're either spike or they're higher, this should raise concern. So just pay attention to oil pressures, temperatures, sensors. Make sure your sensors are in good working order. These are little stories that the engine and also a vessel tells you. A lot of times it's a big incident doesn't happen all at once. It starts small. In the field, for an example, I did a survey on a vessel and it's, they neglect to fix the exhaust manifold and exhaust part for $300. Shortly after that, it cost them, I would say, about $20,000 to repair for a $300 part. These are um, little small things in the industry. Hose get deteriorated. They don't change the hose or they don't pay attention to hose. All of these things happen. Seals also, they don't pay attention to seals, allow water to get inside the engine. That's another situation. So small things lead to big things whenever you have deferred maintenance.
Good point.
Just one more reason to have somebody come out. If you're not doing it yourself, or not trained to do it yourself, it pays to have someone come out and check these little things because, like you said, a $300 part can prevent a $20,000 problem. And we all know that the resale value on these vessels depends on the maintenance. And if a boat has been sitting for a year, you're going to feel the asking price in that consequence, basically. Spending a little bit of money to have somebody go out, check the boat, maintain certain things, if you're not able to do it yourself or you're not there or available, makes a world of difference comes the time when you have to sell the boat.
And actually, it is so popular. We have one more surveyor coming this fall, so stay tuned. And some of the things we're trying to do as Full Displacement and as Current Yachts, because Amanda and I are yacht brokers with a new company that we launched about a year ago called Current Yachts, based in Fort Lauderdale and in Annapolis. And our number one goal is is to bring education and transparency to yacht brokerage to help you better understand how boats are sold. So thank you for watching. None of this works if you're not here. We regularly explore topics such as, how negotiations for boat sales are handled. We talk about co-brokerage and even tax strategies. We had 2 guests for tax strategies, actually. Amanda, can you share with our audience who these guests were? And we'll pull those best segments in the session today.
So we've had 2 episodes, you're right. One was with Patrick Wehrly and another was with Doug Bennefield, a CPA who pairs himself with a financial planner named Joe McKinley. So together, those 2 are a dynamic duo.
So, Patrick, can you speak to one example of something you hear a lot that is just not true or
Yes.
almost never true?
Well, so let's talk about one thing that's patently not true, and then let's take one thing that I think is just bad information. What's not true is generally the income projections that we see around town. They are not good. Let me just say it that way. They're comical. They appear to inflate the amount of money that's going to come in, and then they deflate the amount of expense that a modern yacht. I mean, I have a 53 Power Cat, and I'm telling you that I'm looking around for the spark plug, and I have this mass amount of machines that convert DC power into AC power. I don't know anything about that. I'm a captain. So again, there's a lot of maintenance that I think is downplayed. There's a lot of issues in terms of income that is overplayed. The card then that is a mistake is Section 179. All of the people, I'd say 90%, present company accepted, of people say, well, we're going to use 179. And you're not going to use 179. And you can't use 179 because 179 has a number of limitations that are not going to make it work for yachts or jets. It's just not. We can do it, but we can't use 179. So I think those are 2 examples of people getting bad information, perhaps purposefully, and then getting bad information, perhaps accidentally.
Sure. So let's talk on that then. If they're not using Section 179, are they then using a bonus depreciation?
They are, because again, what's great, Mr. Trump, love him or hate him, and people do, both sides, was very clever about making sure that there was no limitations. In other words, and sometimes when I was arguing with a lawyer the other day. By the way, that argument went very well because not only did he suggest that his client go through with the boat purchase, he called me back and he's buying a monohull. And you can't imagine how negative he was. And the reason he was negative is in the old days, depreciation only applied to certain forms of income, for instance. Now it doesn't. If you bought a boat in January compared to buying a boat in December, it made a big difference. It doesn't anymore. So once again, people are pulling their accountants, pulling their attorneys, and pulling their financial advisors into the conversation. And they're saying, well, doesn't it work this way? I said, yes, it does work that way 25 years ago or 15 years ago, but it doesn't now because of Trump-sponsored bonus depreciation. So all the limitations, that's a great point, Amanda, all the limitations that we struggled with that 179 still has, we don't have any of those limitations. We've had people that bought a boat used, which you couldn't do, closed on the 29th, which is the very last day of the year, and we were still able to affect the bonus depreciation in our preparation of the entity return. That's amazing and hard to believe for some people who know or knew how things used to work.
So what else, Doug, do we need to be on the lookout for proper planning and business documentation? We started with the operating agreement. We talked about the business plan. What else?
Our opinion is that your boat should be able to stand on its own without the charter broker. Most of the charter brokers will allow for owners' weeks where you can rent your own boat. Some of them even offer a discount or an extra commission back to the boat owner for bringing your own charter guests.
Okay.
We think you should have some sort of marketing presence other than the charter broker. But maybe it's a website, maybe it's Facebook, maybe you take pictures when you're on the boat and you just post them to Facebook under a separate social media page. But if somebody wanted to come to boat owner number 2 and say, hey, I would like to rent your boat. I love the pictures I'm seeing on Facebook. You should rent it to them. This helps bolster our argument that you're actively participating in the business.
Okay, that's a good one.
Any regular business would have accounting and record keeping. This is easy. We can do it. That's my world that I live in, small business accounting and tax. Your business, your charter business, should have a QuickBooks or a spreadsheet, and you should be tracking income and expenses. If it was a real business, you would. If you're just dumping cash into it every month and the boat never makes any money, you might not care about the accounting records. We do. We want to check one more box to the IRS that we're operating this business legitimate. We were watching the bank account. We have a credit card. It's set up for the LLC as an EIN number. We have QuickBooks. We're running monthly financials. We're monitoring the performance of our asset.
Okay, very good. So naturally, this takes us to the next question, which is for that particular business form, what entity formation is most common? What do your clients typically use?
The most common entity that we prescribe is a multi-member LLC. By default, at the IRS, a multi-member LLC is a partnership. One of the benefits is the debt that you place on the boat that you're personally guaranteeing allows you to take the losses. It's what gives you basis in the business. The debt gives you risk. The risk allows you to take losses against the debt. If a multi-member LLC is not possible, if it's just one person, we can also choose to be an S corporation, which is a pass-through entity. That pass-through entity, S Corp, will also satisfy part of our audit deflection. If we put this business directly on your 1040, on your individual tax return, the IRS only has to go one place to audit it. If we set up a pass-through entity, such as a partnership or an S corporation, we've added a layer of complexity that, frankly, at this point, the IRS just doesn't have the ability to audit.
And we will have a live stream on the matter of tax advantages and yacht depreciation and charter and the way that you can buy your boat in the most fiscally responsible way. There is such a thing. Additionally, I'd like to call out special episodes we had with guests such as Captain Paul Bates recently from No Regrets Lifestyle, as well as Captain Chris and Alyse and Calypso Sailing. So we'll pull the best segments from these episodes as well today. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time very much. And if you're not yet a member of our YouTube channel, you can join for just a few dollars a month and enjoy more of our contents and support us. Thank you. If you are a buyer and you're considering single versus twin engine for a shaft boat, Paul, how do you help them decide before they make the decision what is right for them? Perhaps by size or budget, would you say, or durability concerns? What do you say to them to help them decide?
There's guys that'll say that a single or a twin are, but I don't rule it out. So I don't want you to go into this, especially in that budget market. Like, you cannot rule out a single screw, or you can't rule out twin screws. You can't do it because you don't know what the opportunities are going to come up. And so if you say, no, I'm not going to operate, the big question is, do I operate the single screw? Can they be as maneuverable as a twin screw? No, because you need points of thrust. And on a twin screw, you can have 4 points of thrust. On a single screw, you can only have 3 points of thrust. So the more points of thrust you have, the easier the boat is to maneuver. But a single screw with twin thrusters, a lot of main ship, it will come with a single thruster or a twin thruster. It's the number one boat on the loop, and there's a reason for that because of that built-in staircase getting up to the helm. But a lot of, they do make that in a twin screw, twin thrustered boat too, which is very, very maneuverable. Later on in the podcast, I'm going to tell you which boat is the actual most maneuverable boat in the entire world. And you're not going to believe it. You'll think
You're
it's
not going to tell
else.
us now. You're saying we have to wait.
You have to wait.
We'll come back to that.
Well, that brings us to the next point, which a lot of boats today have IPS pod drives. And I can say I have heard so many times people saying, no pod drives. If the boat has pod drives, I don't want it. So then I've also heard, and I've driven myself, pod drives. And, I think it's more so the ease and ability of them are very simple, in my opinion. But it could be the maintenance and the cost if you actually do hit the bottom with pod drives.
I have a feeling Paul does not love pod drives from his face. I don't know.
Okay.
So tell us about how pod drives work.
I love pod drives, by the way.
Okay.
But again, let's look at it in our toolbox. So those are good tools. Does that make sense? But they're tools for people that can afford those tools. So if you can't afford those tools, you got to take them off the list. And then there's better pod drives. The IPS Volvo, if you buy IPS, you're buying Volvo engine. There is no such thing as a bad diesel motor. They need fuel, air, and keep them cool, and they're going to run for you. So now you got to go to the drive system, and we have shafts and pods, and there are better pods than, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I think both pod systems, which is Zeus and IPS, I think they both perform fairly close, but the Volvo will be a little bit better. They at slow speed, you can really just kind of just take it. Again, it's teaching people throttle control, because you get in there with a pod and you start jacking that pod around, you'll be surprised. You can cause a lot of damage with the pod drive real fast. So, Amanda, you've driven one or you have not?
Absolutely, I have. Yeah.
And did you use IPS or have you done Zeus or
No,
both,
only
or?
the IPS. I have not driven Zeus drives, but IPS many
Real
times.
close, like you would have no problem making the transitions. There really is no difference. The dynamic positioning, all of it's pretty much the same. And the handle of the pod, it's very minute. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So as far as the actual, if they're working correctly, maintained correctly, both systems work very well.
Yeah.
Can you explain, Paul, actually, the difference in the technology where on the Volvo pod, the propeller is facing forward, right? Versus Cummins, they're not, they're facing aft. Can you explain that and how that came about? And is the fuel efficiency in your mind, is that proven in real life?
So think of it as a front wheel drive car.
Yeah.
So when you're being pulled across the water, and you do get better efficiency. So that's why Volvo did it. But is it good for the keys? Is it good for, like if you pick up a fishing line, if you pick up a crab pot line, if you pick something up in one of those Volvo IPS drives, which happens in the loop. I've talked to so many guys and they'll hit a log inside of there's nothing you can do about it because you can't see it. So having those front drives, it's one of the negatives about IPS. If I had to put a negative on IPS, if I'm buying pods, I'm buying IPS and taking my chances with that, but be prepared to take it out and have the maintenance done if you hit something, because you can't. I have one particular boat out there. I hate to pick on boats, but this is a Burger. It was over a $7 million yacht build, and it has pods on it. These guys travel. He's probably got 100,000 miles under his belt. All he does is they live on this thing full time. They never go to marinas, blah, blah, blah. And he's hit. You know what I'm saying? I have another guy who has a 65 Viking. I'm supposed to be out there in a couple of weeks. Same thing, going through the locks in the Erie Canal, he hit a log. So those forward-facing pods that's the negative about IPS, whereas the Zeus are rear-facing, so you're actually pushing. So the IPS are going to be a little bit more efficient, and when I say that, it's probably 5% or something like that, but the best fuel mileage and best performing are the IPS, but you've got to deal with that front-facing pod. So it is a negative.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's good and bad.
And you got to weigh those things. And the question is, we all know this as boaters. The question is, have you ever touched bottom? There's the ones that have, and then the liars. So.
Correct. It's the same thing with motorcycle drivers. The guys that are going down and the guys that have been down, same thing.
Yeah.
I've been boating a long time in the Keys and everywhere, and they'll ask me, where's the best place? But you got a chance to run aground anywhere you go. And it happens to all of us, every single boater. You're going to run aground. It's just hopefully you know what to do. You've been trained and you know how to get out of it very quickly.
When a new owner takes possession of their new to them boat, whether it's a trawler or a motor cruiser, what do you find is the number one mistake that these people do and that you help address in the first few days of training?
I won't call it a mistake. I'll call it a huge learning curve.
You?
Because the kind of people buying the size or the price of boats that we deal with are retiring, and then they're buying their dream boat, and they're buying the dream. And then when we get on the boat, the first thing we do is we teach them owner responsibilities. So we'll start from the bow with the anchor locker, and we'll do what we call a crawl through. So we'll crawl through the boat from the anchor locker, under the bilges, in the forward cabin, in the engine room, all the way to the lazarette with the rudders. We'll go back to the engine room and spend more time pointing out air conditioner water pumps, air conditioner condenser compressors, the engines, the transmissions, the shaft seals, and on and on and on and on. So we believe that it's important that a boat owner operator know what's down there. The second half is not that they know how to repair it, but they know how to recognize that a problem is coming. So let's say it's noontime today and you've got a problem, so it's not a catastrophe, but if I get to a marina or an anchorage this afternoon, I can take care of it, or get to a marina this afternoon and have a professional come out and take care of it tomorrow. So we teach owner responsibility and DIY for some of the things skill level might be.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When I first bought my boat and I learned about the acid washing of the AC unit, and I had no idea that barnacles would grow into the entire system. I knew it was a water-cooled system, but I didn't think through that process. And it's like, okay, this is seawater. Barnacles are going to get in here. And in this warm environment that I live, they're going to grow in there too. And I remember the first time I got the high pressure fault on my AC, and in Florida, it's very important to have your AC when you live aboard, especially at night. And I learned that it's a normal occurrence that every 6 months, you're going to have to go through and acid wash the barnacles out of your AC system. These little things that most live aboard and boat owners in general just really don't know until someone walks through and says, see this strainer right here? Yes, you're cleaning it every week, but did you know that you need to do this next step? And then creating a do-it-yourself acid wash bucket and all of those things. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But, I wanted to ask you guys, the taking delivery, you've mentioned that you help a lot of people with their new boats. People think that means here's the keys, here you go. That's taking delivery of a boat. How would you help a client in taking delivery of a boat? You talked about going from, the bow to the stern and going through those things. What else would you do?
A lot of different things that we do, mostly because of our long experience of living aboard and cruising. And everybody asks, how many miles have you cruised? I don't have a clue. I don't know. But we ask them, so they work with the broker, they do the sea trial and survey, they review the survey. If there's any gray areas, then we can help them decide what to do about those gray areas, if they should be fixed or repaired before they take possession. And then when they do active sale and then the keys turn over to them, then if they hire us, we can go aboard the boat. And the first thing we do is the crawl through. The second thing we do is we teach them dock lines, cleat knots and spring lines, and cross stern lines, bow lines. And you think, why are you starting there? Because when we come back, we got to tie the boat up. So we can't teach them after we come back. We need to teach them before we leave.
And one of the best ways for people to learn is, let's say they bought the boat in Miami and they needed to go to Charleston. We have them come aboard and do a training delivery. So that training delivery allows them every day to build on the day before. And the first day, they are truly drinking through a fire hose. They're just so much information and only some of it sticks, right? So every day, a little bit more sticks, a little bit more sticks. And of course, you can definitely learn by starting in your home port marina and going out and coming back every day. You can learn that way. But it really, if you have the opportunity to go on your delivery, wherever your boat is being purchased from and where your home port is going to be, going on that delivery and learning. There's a difference between a delivery captain and a training captain for sure. Delivery captains will get the boat there and they're really good at what they do. But most of them, and that's how we fell into the training. We had somebody say to us, can I go? And I said, it's your boat. Why couldn't you go? And they said, because the last time I bought a boat, the captain told me I asked too many questions. Again, it's your boat. Many captains, and we all have different strengths. Many captains say, I don't want to have to answer all those questions. Just like a mechanic sometimes doesn't want you breathing over their shoulder to learn. There's a certain way to learn and a certain way to teach. And different people learn different ways. And we have to figure that out too. How do you learn best? Are you do you catch the ball this way, or do you catch the ball overhead, or are you a person that reads everything and believes everything that you read? Because you can't. It's not all accurate. Just like everything, internet is not accurate either. But it's something that if you can do a training delivery, you can benefit so much and learn so much. And on days where you're just overwhelmed, we're there, so it's okay. It's not like your boat's not going to move. We'll just take it a little slower with you. on those days, or we'll tell you, this is the day we're not going out. This is not good for you. This is not good for your boat. The weather is not good, or there's a problem that we identified that you may not have realized if this was your first time aboard the boat. So there's a lot that building each day. That's a great way for some people to learn.
And I'd like to add to that, building each day. So you talked about going from Miami to Charleston. So you live down south. So you got bridge. So you learn radio protocol. You learn how to call the bridges and open the bridges.
Learn how to hold position.
Station keeping. Then when you get above Palm Beach, we don't have too many bridges after that. But then we start getting into areas with sandbars, tidal currents, tides being deep or shallow. So a training delivery is good. And because we sell ourselves as being training captains, whenever you're comfortable, as long as we're in a place that we can get a rental car or an airplane, we can step off the boat.
So it's not like you have to have us come the whole way. We can plan on doing the whole way if that's what you want, but maybe you only want us for 5 days. Maybe that's all your insurance requires. At day 3 or so, sometimes we've had people say, can you stay a little longer? We will. If we can't, we'll see if we can get, like, my brother's also a captain, and we'll see if he can come up, or we maybe give them a break for a week and they stay because maybe they stopped in, I don't know, some Savannah
Beach,
someplace where it's a fun place to be for a couple of days, get a breather, and then we can come back.
The market is something we talk about a lot, and we had an episode on the boat market with Infolink. Amanda, tell us more about that.
We interviewed Peter Houseworth, and he gave us some really good insights into what kind of boats are selling, what kind of boats are not selling these days, and the changes throughout the years of what is hot and what is not. That was very informative, and a lot of people enjoyed listening to that podcast. So we'll make sure to link some of the best features here.
Absolutely. And some shocking data, really. And one of them in particular was quite kind of heartbreaking, and that is the sailboat sales on life support. So catch up with that episode. The link is below, and a little excerpt is coming here next. For every 4 pre-owned boat transaction, there's 1 new boat transaction. And here is that breakdown over the years in terms of volume. I'll let you comment on these slides, Peter. It's pretty steady, I would say, over time.
Yeah, some of it is just people's perception. So you kind of get the feeling, talking around the industry that, it's not so good. It's wishy-washy. It's not the best of times, but it's not the worst of times either.
Right.
I mean, that's just the reality. So, we're looking at the new to pre-owned boat transactions. So the new boat market has been fairly steady. As you can see in the slide there, we had a peak in both new boat sales and pre-owned boat sales in the pandemic. So while there was a kind of a hiccup and the whole industry just stopped and then got going again, it was fairly short-lived, and we came out of it like gangbusters. So most manufacturers that we do business with had a 2 or in sometimes 3-year backlog of orders that people placed during the pandemic, knowing that they weren't going to get it right away, but no one knew how long it was going to go on for. And so, the total transaction volume, peaked out in the pandemic at 1.2 million. So that's new plus pre-owned. And it was about, 250,000 new boats, just shy of 1 million pre-owned boats. But we also saw an uptick in pre-owned boats where people were selling because there was, basically the field inventory was entirely depleted. Anything that was for sale got sold. So there was almost nothing left.
You were there to ride that wave. How was that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw it. It was a seller's market at that time. You could ask anything you wanted, and you had people fighting over it. We've seen the same trend in the real estate market as well. There was just not enough inventory. Now, Peter, as you've said, it is a buyer's market. People are having to, when they're selling under value, in my opinion. So, it has been a drastic switch. And we saw that on the slide before, that it came from, a drop with the pandemic, then a super rise, and then almost a drop again where we were in 2008 and 2009. And it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how we climb or even dip down in 2026 for next year's data.
There's a lot of things going on in the market. It's very fluid between interest rates and tariffs and whatever. It's, I'm surprised that it's not worse than it's been so far. compared to what's going on globally, it's kind of like, okay, we're hanging in there.
It is very resilient. I would agree with that. It's important to tell that story too, Peter. So thank you for saying that. And because we realize the market is largely served through non-broker transactions, we also wanted to tell you about an initiative that Amanda and I have been working on and launched recently in a beta mode called FSBOAT, FSBOAT, to help private buyers and sellers transact more easily on their own. And so we discussed this very venture with the host of the Three Sheets podcast from Lats and Nats magazine, and you can catch this episode link down below as well.
If you ask anybody that's listening to this podcast to please stand up if you have a boat that's under 200,000, you're going to have the vast majority of people out there standing up. Those people are ignored because the brokers are not going to make as much commission on those people. So what happens that 96% of all the boats that are out there that need help in moving their boats? This is the real problem, the huge elephant in the room that nobody is addressing. Now, I will say one thing about Yachter. IYBA, the International Yacht Brokers Association, created this app or created this platform called Yachter, and it was the great white hope. Everybody wanted to get behind it because it was all the brokers in the country saying, okay, we will build this incredible platform so that we don't have to rely on spending all of our money to some huge corporation that is run by investors that are only looking for, dollars and don't really care about our industry. So Yachter was created as a result of that. It got so close, just so close, but it fell short just at the last minute. Well, I guess what the point is, all in all, is that everybody acknowledges that there's a problem. There's a massive problem.
No, there is.
With how
Agreed.
boaters move their boats nowadays. And for people like us in the industry, where it's our job to connect boaters with boating businesses, we're pulling our hair out. You can see I have very little hair left because I'm pulling it out, trying to figure out how I can actually help the boaters to enjoy their boating lifestyle more, while when they go through the boat buying process, it becomes extremely difficult. Granted, a lot of the brokers are putting on a happy face and the boaters don't even feel it, but we're getting to the point where the boaters themselves are going to start to feel it. And that's kind of the frustrating thing. So really, I'd love for you guys to talk more about how do you affect a change for people with boats under 200,000 that are getting ignored because of what's going on in the marketplace.
It's a very valid point. This route that people are forced into because of the price point or because of their financial reality, so they're upside down on the boat, there's no room for a broker commission. Where do they go? Well, guess what? The people who can formulate that answer have this much incentive to find a solution. That is the definition of brokers, and going against it is professional suicide. That's what Amanda called it.
Yeah, professional
We've
suicide.
been thinking about this for a long time.
Yes,
and
we
so
absolutely have.
forced sale by owner is a reality. It will continue to be there. And instead of fighting it, we have decided to help support it. And that still gives somebody the chance to try and list their boat on their own or buy a boat without a broker if that is their choice. And none of the platforms facilitate that today. And we're saying it doesn't have to be in opposition with yacht brokerage. It can just supplement it whereas needed. As we know, there's multi-million-dollar buyers that don't use brokers or sellers. They figure it out on their own. And trust me, they have found a way. But what's great about this idea, this concept, is that we're actually now going to be able to help the 96% of the market. So, Amanda, you want to share a few words more about this?
So we clearly saw in the launch of Current Yachts that there was a huge market that was being completely ignored. The majority of the market, the people, the average boaters, the people like Maryline and I, when I first found my boat, I went to sailboatslisting.com. I don't even know if it's still up. I think it is, but there are ghost listings on there that are probably still up and for sale from the time I was buying my boat like 10 years ago. So outdated and so old. The only other place that people go that we've heard is Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Yeah. And we all know the amount of scammers and things that you can get into on those platforms. They know nothing about boats. There is no guidance. There is no help. To do the math of a boat under $200,000, we're talking about, let's take a $200,000 boat, okay? 10% commission, that's $20,000. That's $10,000 to each party that comes. Then you have to split that with the brokerage house. That's $5,000, okay, that someone is going to put into a lot of time and energy. It takes just as much time to sell, probably more. I would beg to say it takes more time to sell a 15 to 20-year-old $200,000, $150,000 to $200,000 sailboat than it does a new, nicer $700,000 catamaran. And what would you choose if you were a broker? Where would you put your time and effort? Into that boat that's going to take days of your time after survey and travel and showing different boats and going through the standing rigging and the running rigging and the engine and all the different details of a sailboat that is much harder to sell at a $5,000 payoff? Or would you go to that higher end $1 million price point? And this is where the industry has just ignored this small little section. And I'm not saying that people should work days and days for $5,000. I'm saying let's give them a platform that actually lets them do it themselves, because most of these boaters do. If they're already going to Facebook and they're already going to Craigslist, that's what they're doing. So we set up this company called FSBOAT, FSBOAT. It's for sale by owner marketplace, boat marketplace. So it's coming out because we recognize quickly that this segment of the industry has been completely ignored. And we are going to guide people with real boat selling knowledge through the process and handhold it step by step along the way. David, I see you wanting to say something.
No, I'm like, you're brilliant.
One of my favorites was Captain Steve. Some of you may recognize him from boattest.com. He was with us and talked about his career of driving different boats and what he liked and disliked about that. He's a career professional, and he was really one of my favorite podcasts of this past year.
So for having been on the manufacturer side, I understand how the collaboration worked. But for those of our viewers who are not familiar with how things worked, how would you handle your tests and reviews? Because obviously, Boat Test is known for having all these very positive reviews. And that's a fair knock, but that's because it's a relationship. And those manufacturers wouldn't invite you back, and you wouldn't have that contract back to shoot more of their models if you trash their product. So how do you walk that line, Captain Steve? How do you stay honest within that format?
That's a very valid question, and it is a fine line indeed. I can't say I don't like this. This sucks. What were they thinking? Even if I want to. However, the savvy viewers that have met me at boat shows and said, we get it. We understand that when you say this, if I don't like something, they can figure it out. Let's say I just don't like something simple, like the beverage holders are too small. I'd like to see this be a little bit bigger. They know I don't like that. And that's a subtle. Now, if I really don't like something, like if I hate something and I can't say I hate it, then the key words were, now this is interesting.
I was just going to say, you used the word interesting.
And it's funny when people come to me in a boat show and say, I know when you say this is interesting, you really don't like them. Like, yeah, you cracked the code. You got me. So that's how I walk that line. I'll say this is interesting, and then I'll point it out. And it's left for the viewer to decide, is it interesting because it's awful? Is it interesting because it's new, unique? That's up to the viewer, and it's a good way to handle it.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. Is there one thing that a boat manufacturer consistently oversells and that a buyer consistently overlooks?
Yeah, I would say the fit and finish and maintenance costs that the buyer will project maybe goes to an extreme, and the buyer tends to not even think about those things when they're looking at the boat at a boat show.
So give us an example.
The Boston Whaler, hey, unsinkable. They've played that to death, and they're right to do that. I don't mean to knock Boston Whaler. They're a great product. They've done the unsinkable thing to death, and it doesn't touch on the fact that after you buy this boat, there's maintenance, there's upkeep, especially if you're in a saltwater environment. And buyers just don't think about that kind of thing. But that's something that
That's a passion purchase that we all know about.
Yeah, that's something that manufacturers oversell a lot. Our boats are solid and wonderful, and you don't have to do anything, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But then you get it, and you just don't think about the fact that it needs a lot of maintenance. Any moving part needs maintenance, no matter what it is, whether it's a boat, a car, plane, whatever it is. Boats are more susceptible to that because of the environment that they're in. And it's just something that people don't get. You got to knock off 20% of your purchase price at least per year for upkeep on that boat.
All right. So we hope you enjoyed this special Best of Full Displacement. We look forward to seeing you at the upcoming fall boat shows. Whether you're coming to the Annapolis Sailboat Show, Powerboat Show, or FLIBS, you can connect with Current Yachts. Go to the website and RSVP there. And if you tell us you're coming, we'll make sure that you get tickets, compliments of Current Yachts.
Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Full Displacement. Fair winds.
Fair winds.